I was very blessed because I grew up nearly always in the countryside. We were not city dwellers, and we moved around a huge amount because we were with what was then called the Admiralty. But it didn't matter how often we moved, a wonderful garden would always be created wherever we moved. 3 years later when we left, they'd start again somewhere else. So I grew up with gardening all around me. I think perhaps the garden that most stands out in my mind of those that I grew up with was our garden in Singapore. In that garden we had banana trees, we had bamboo trees, we had a particularly beautiful flower called the kengwa, which only blooms at night and has the most heavenly scent. And when we came back to this country and eventually bought our own house and settled down rather than moving around, that house was called Kengwa. I was so bored with gardening as a child. Couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why they spent hour upon hour of these precious Saturdays and Sundays pruning and clipping and planting and planning. And I was thinking, oh, I could only ever be persuaded to work in the garden through sheer bribery. I remember on one occasion my father offered me £0.50 if I would weed a certain bed. And I weeded half of it and got absolutely fed up. And I was full of fury because he wouldn't pay me 1 3/4 when I'd weeded half. And then, of course, the inevitable happened. I left home, got my own flat, which lo and behold had a garden attached. And suddenly I had a garden and I had to do something with it. Well, of course, I went completely mad. I mean, I put in all sorts of unsuitable things like eucalyptus trees and goodness knows what else, not really realising how far they would grow. But that was the beginning of taking an interest in gardens.
But with her demanding political career, Anne has had little time to dedicate to gardening. And in the next few years, she plans to change that for good.
If this is a normal length parliament and not a surprisingly short one, then in normal circumstances I would expect to retire at the end of it. My intention is to retire to Dartmoor and I shall create the most wonderful garden and I shall have the rest of my life to do it. I think I shall take inspiration from gardens like this one and from my memories of parental gardens.